Pause for dramatic
Where's
effect.
that voice that says recording started? This is being recorded, but it's recording. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Rachel and I are, and our whole family. Actually, we have a couple kids that are not with us. We're out wandering the earth, so we're in a different location. And today we get to share a tiny little bench. It's awesome. We each get one cheek. Today. So we're super close sharing a bench. But having lots of cool experiences, cool adventures. Last week, I had the privilege to lead Be the Man adventure for my masterclass in Tribe. It was amazing. And we had just big, long days in epic slot canyons.
I can always tell when you have an amazing trip because you come home exhausted.
Yeah, I was spent. So it's good. Like we went all in and just had great discussions, just talking about how to be better men and better leaders and better businessmen and better husbands and fathers, and just to be whole and facing all the great things. So it was amazing. We had a great time. And then I got to speak again last night to another group of men and their sons who are in a homeschooling co-op. And then tomorrow I get to speak again up in Idaho along the Snake River and Snake River Valley. Super stoked about that. So we are busy, man. We are busy.
Which fits in actually with some of the coaching questions we have for today.
Yes.
In fact, it fits perfectly with some of the coaching questions.
And then I got a bunch of questions last night and via email and messages and on the trip. So we actually have a lot of questions that I think a lot of you are going to relate to and connect with. And then with questions coming in, and those of you who join, I know there's a bunch of people missing and will watch the recording. For those of you who join, if you have specific questions, we're up for just coaching. We just want to hit like targeted areas of life so that we have the tools and the strategies, because the worst feeling is that feeling of not knowing what to do. Like having a problem, having a difficulty, and not knowing what to do about it. That is so frustrating and infuriating, and sometimes feels hopeless. And I think, man, if any feeling is among the worst, it's a feeling of hopelessness.
Well, and I think like an overwhelmed hopelessness. I think not knowing what to do, but not knowing what to do because there's so many things to do, right?
And not knowing what to do in multiple ways. So it's stacking. It gets crazy hard.
Yeah.
So Rachel and I were just talking about our own situation. I think this is relevant to all of us. So we'll start here. And I know more people are joining us, and we're glad you're here, you guys. One thing that really stands out, it stands out all the time, but particularly stands out when we are on vacation, when we're in a different environment, when we're outside of our space and our systems in particular. And we've been so deliberate about setting up our environment and our system strategically that you guys, it makes life and parenting and marriage and work so much easier when you have your systems in place. And one of our joys and privileges going and staying with people and meeting with people and seeing them in their space and their world. And it's easy because we are so what's the word?
Observant?
Yeah, because we are so observant. But we're observant because we think about it all the time. We're so keyed into it, right? The things you do masterfully, right? Let's say you're into music and you are a musician. When somebody's performing, you can pick up the slightest little moment there, a note that's off pitch. And me, I'm sitting there like, that was amazing.
Perfect.
It was perfect. And they're like, I missed like this whole thing. Really? I didn't even notice. Right. And so you might pick it up like that, where I'm clueless. And we're so into this stuff that we're onto it, right? And so we observe it. And we can observe where systems are working and systems are off. Now, to not be, hopefully you guys have been with us long enough, like what we're referring to when we talk about systems, like family systems, personal systems. But one of the easiest to explain and one of the most obvious that we see all the time is what food you have in your pantry and your fridge. And like
Which-
what you buy at the grocery store, what
Yeah.
aisles you go down are part of your family systems.
Right, which I was gonna say that what you have in your pantry and in your fridge is a direct result of the system you have for grocery shopping.
Yep.
So a lot of times people are like, oh, I want to eat healthier. And they try to eat healthier by still buying the same things,
And then
but
exercising
then
discipline.
exercising willpower to not eat them, to not eat it. I don't do that. That's not a system that has ever worked for me. If I am around sweet things, I generally give into temptation. Now I will allow myself that on occasion when I'm out, but I do not buy that stuff and bring it into my house. That's how I eat healthy. So I have a system for shopping, which it's basically just rules. I don't buy things with certain ingredients, like high fructose corn syrup. I gave that up years ago. I don't buy anything that has high fructose corn syrup in
Or
it.
corn syrup,
At this
period.
point, yeah, any corn products. At this point, I don't buy anything that has sugar in it. So that's my system for eating healthy, by shopping in a way that doesn't bring unhealthy things into my house. So that way it's easy for me and my kids. I don't have to be concerned about what snacks they're eating and you know, if they're getting into things they shouldn't, because I don't have any of that in my house. I only have the things in my house that they're allowed to eat because they're healthy. So that's just one example of how systems make your life easier,
Can I-
because you give up the need to make these constant decisions and to constantly be using willpower and having this power struggle with your kids about what they can and can't do, because in my environment and my house, that's not allowed, or it's not there. It's not an option.
So let me map this out, how it works in my mind. There's a system up here of like, well, I want to eat healthy. And so my mental system first is the ingredients I allow or don't allow into my body. So that little system right there decides how I shop. So then I go to the store and I purchase the things that fit in that system, right? So one system leads to another. So I'm there shopping, and then I bring that home, and that system, the shopping system, now turns into or flows into my pantry, fridge, food at home system. Well, then that, because I've kind of tracked that down, and it's not that hard, I just get clear about it and then I just do it. And that then eliminates so many problems at home around food, whether it's your own health or what your kids are consuming. And this was gigantic. And it, you know, I get really passionate about this. The counselors, the doctors, the people who know what they're doing, when they look at behavior problems, the first thing they look at is food, because so many behavioral problems and mood problems and emotional, psychological problems are really stemming from food. So you might have a
Or at least
behavioral,
directly connected
directly
and
connected,
influenced
yeah.
by it.
So you might have a behavioral disaster at home. Maybe it's you. Maybe you just feel like crap all the time, or you're off, or you're just dragging, you never have enough energy, or you're moody or sensitive, or maybe it's your kids just reactive and act crazy. And you can track that back to what they're eating, which is what's in the house, which is what you shop, and which is where you have this system around what you eat and what you put in your body or not.
Well, and what I want to point out, because you touched on it, and I think that's very important. You were talking about how it starts here in your brain. And that is the truth. Anytime we're facing some sort of issue like behavior, which is connected to food, which is connected to eating, which is connected to health, we always go, we call it upstream. And ultimately where it ends is here, because unless you're convinced that eating, let's say, seed oils is horrible for you, like so deadly, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, canola oil, anything, any of those oils, unless you are convinced that that is terrible, then you don't really care. You're going to buy it, right? Not knowing all of the health problems that contributes to, right? And so you have to ultimately work upstream to convincing yourself here so that you can then act that system out in the world. So a lot of times if we're not doing our systems, it's because we're not convinced enough here of why it's important to do it and how painful it is to not do it.
and the trickle effect it has on so many things in family life, right? And so, like I said, we're out on this trip for a couple months. We're staying with family, and they don't have those systems. And so our kids, our younger ones, will just fall into their systems, right? For convenience or fun, or the unbelievable drug addicting experience of eating sugary stuff, like, what is going on? And so they get into that, right? And then, well, it's a good reminder for all of us, because then, like, if it gets thrown off, then, and we observe this too, so many parents are in this constant struggle. It's a continual battle. Like, don't eat that, don't do this, and stop doing that, and why are you doing this? And from our experience of being able to work with so many people and getting this dialed in for us and for others, it's like, oh, there's systems. Their systems are sabotaging their success. And you guys have heard us talk about this so many times, but it's worth repeating and worth revisiting. It's the system. So wherever you want better results, look at the systems. Are your systems supporting your success, or are your systems sabotaging your success and making it that much more difficult? So I'll share, and again, those of you here, if you have specific questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat and we can address them. Or come on, Mike, whatever. I want to address another one that got asked last night. I spoke, and then afterwards, a gentleman came up to me, and he was like, man, love what you're doing, and your store is so cool. He's like, my wife, she's always talking about traveling as a family and doing these cool projects, and she's just so excited and into this and that, and wants to do everything you guys are doing. It's so cool. And he's like, I got to be honest, like, in our family, we start a lot of things and rarely finish anything. And so it's like, yay, we get all excited and motivated. We want to do this, but eventually it kind of just peters off, and like, hey, let's do this thing. and it goes off. And he's like, then they start stacking and stacking and stacking. And before you know it, years have passed. And if you're not careful, decades have passed. And you look back and like, we started a lot of things. We got excited about a lot of things. We didn't actually do a lot of things. And he's like, how can I finish something? How can we follow through and actually do something that we dream about doing? And I'm like, isn't that like the ultimate human experience of like, we want to do things and we get excited about things, we learn about things, but we don't rarely do we really follow all the way through. And we noticed that early on, and we're like, no, man, we're fixing this junk. Like, I used to be that guy. I'm like, I get excited to start all kinds of things. And
I think that can be an addiction.
Oh, totally. You get addicted to starting, right? And when things get tough, or they get grind, or they start to get boring, or like, oh man, it's a lot harder than I thought. Oh, what's the next new thing? Yay, next new shiny object. And so then it all comes back to systems and picking the right thing with the right sustainable effort, and making sure it really aligns with your life purpose, your life mission, your desires, your dreams, and then setting up those systems so it just keeps happening until you get what you want. And then you start stacking wins, W-I-N-S, you start stacking these wins in your favor instead of stacking losses in your favor, which really isn't in your favor, but you stack it against yourself. And then you start thinking, man, right? You start feeling bad about yourself.
Because the reality is, and you've had a few coaching clients like that as well, and we call it their runway is filled with stuff. And so you're trying to take off, you're trying to achieve your dreams or do something meaningful, exciting, but the runway is cluttered with unfinished projects, basically. And it has an emotional toll, it has a mental toll, it has a physical toll. It obviously takes a toll on your space and your environment. And so it is very critical to be able to clear that runway if you want to take off. If you want to actually achieve the dreams that you have to take off. And you can't take off if your runway is covered with crap. I'm laughing because I made Instagram, this is just a side note, an Instagram story the other day, and I was quoting our podcast and I said, you have to take care of your crap or something. And Instagram put it like I was swearing it. Went beep. I was like, that's funny. So anyways, taking care of your crap.
So let me ask those of you that are here and those of you that are watching the recording, spend some time thinking about this and write about it. Like get a journal out, write about it, think about it, talk about it with your spouse, maybe with your kids if they're older. But let me ask you, what systems need to be addressed? What clutter is on your runway, for example, that needs to be addressed? Let's name some specifics. You can jump on mic if you want, you can throw in the chat if you want, but let's get specific because if we don't ever get specific about it, then we just move along in generalities and we're like, yeah, I need better systems. And we don't ever address it. So we just keep rolling along. And then time passes, and you're like, I'm so frustrated because I'm not making any progress. I feel like I'm not moving in life. So what are the things that you need to address? And just so, again, this is just for your benefit. And we all learn from it. Like none of us is as smart as all of us. So we all learn from this. And I think we can all relate to similar symptoms and systems and strategies. But what is it that needs to be addressed where you feel like you're just lagging or dragging, or you can't pick up momentum or pace, maybe because the runway's cluttered, right? Oh, okay. And this is where we start when we very first started. So here's this question here. So if it feels like everything is a mess, where do you start? For example, I might focus on my finances and then homeschool crashes. So I run to clean up that mess and then turn around and then health goes downhill and it's all a mess. And thank you for asking that question. Excellent question.
Well, and I want to expound on this because this was from an email and it connects directly with it.
Perfect.
When everything is not working, where do you start? My health, finances, relationships, marriage, children, friends, home, job, mind and education, spirituality, homeschool are all at an all-time low. When I tackle one, the others all fall apart and I can't get out. I'm exhausted. Help. Okay.
So good. So good.
Yes.
And I think, well, you can virtually raise your hand or for reals raise your hand. Like who can relate to that? Like all the stuff. We have to address all these things. We're not just like one-celled organisms here. We're not just like
we're multifaceted.
One role beings like, oh, I just have one little role. That's all I do. I just feed myself. That's and entertainment. That's my second role, food and entertainment. Like none of us are like that. We're achievers. We want to get things done. So again, man, I just can't emphasize enough. This is a product. It's a symptom of failing systems, because when the systems are in place, we can keep all the balls in the air at the same time. Right?
Now, one key to that is we have a limited number of balls.
Yes, 47.
47.
Just kidding. Come on, no. Just trying to crack a smile from you guys here. It's really hard to get you to crack a smile when your camera's off, by the way. I'm just like, hopefully that worked. So you're right. You have to have a limited number of things. But what I want to emphasize is you can do multiple things well if and only if you have good systems in place. But if you don't, then you have to turn all your attention away. And the moment you do that, anything that doesn't have a good system collapses.
Right. Because the reality is, for one thing, it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to have all of those things operating perfectly. That's not realistic. But you can get the systems in place so that all of those things, and I'm saying all referring to the ones you identify as the most important, which we'll talk about, because you can't do everything. That's just not an option in life to do everything, right? You have to pick and choose. You can pick the ones that are most important and establish systems that help makes maintaining those sustainable. so you can sustain them with the effort you are able to put forward. It does require effort, but it's not more effort than you're capable of giving, if that makes sense.
In fact, when a good system's in place,
it can be less.
It can be
effort.
less effort with better results.
Like we were talking about with the food. If you're spending all of this energy, let's just go back to this. If you're spending all of this energy trying to control what your kids eat because you're tired of them climbing in the pantry to eat the cookies, and maybe that's happening regularly multiple times per day, that's energy that's being put into that, when if you eliminated that as an option, you now have that energy back to focus on something else. Now you do that with everything in your life and you're like, wow, this is an energy drain. How can I get rid of that? Or how can I minimize this energy drain? Now you've gained more energy back to focus on other things. So it really is that sort of process. That's what systems do. They help you remove energy leaks and then refocus that energy into other things you want and need to do.
Man, I get so excited about this stuff. I know I've said this before, like in some magic wand world, Rachel and I would come to each of your homes and we would walk through with you, I mean, with invitation, right? Invited and walk through and be like, okay, let's look at this system. Let's look at this system. Let's go through, let's sit down and go through this and let's go through this and just strategically do that. Like we don't have the bandwidth to do that and make that all happen, but we have these meetings so that you can do it. You can start walking through, take each section and start scanning through the systems. Like, where's this big drain? And realize like, man, a faulty system here, like Rachel was just explaining, is taking away so much energy and so much bandwidth and so much mental, emotional space that no wonder I'm dropping the ball over here, because this is just draining everything from me.
Mm-hmm.
So Amy's comment was awesome. Maybe start with a support system. And you guys know how much we love that. We love, like, anything that can be outsourced probably ought to be outsourced so that you can give your attention to the things that only you can do or that you do best or that you enjoy the most. And so having support systems in place can be vital. And that includes getting your older kids to help out a lot more. You start getting them into the system.
Yeah. I would also like to add to that before we answer these next questions, that I think and this does kind of actually answer the next one. I think another great place to start is with eliminating. I think very often when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel like we don't know where to start, we don't know what to do, we don't know what to focus on first, it's sometimes easier to focus on what you know for sure you should get rid of. Sometimes that means I literally have no time to watch Netflix. I'm just cutting that out. I no longer have time for Netflix at this time in my life. Now, maybe later I can watch a show, but right now I just don't have time for that. So Netflix goes. So sometimes we have to start with an elimination system. Like, let's get rid of some things. And that can happen just as things come up. Maybe someone will call and say, hey, can you do this thing at church? Nope, sorry, I cannot. I am focusing on my family. Can you do this thing for work? Can you do this thing for the family? Nope, I cannot. I am focusing on my family. So I really think eliminating is a big deal. And I don't think people realize this about us because you can't tell from a distance, but we have eliminated a lot.
Yep.
Like, there's just a lot of things we don't do. I mean, we used to joke about it, that we just don't go to tribal functions, right? People will invite us and we're like, I'm sorry, we're busy. Like, there's just things we don't do.
In fact, well, here's why. I established a clear rule, and I'll do this with my coaching clients. Unless everything, all the important things in your life are totally dialed in, you don't have the privilege to say yes to outside things. It's a luxury. It's a privilege. You can start helping other people outside of your family when your family is totally dialed in. Until then, get your stuff together, right? Because the the cost on that, the exchange rate
Mhm.
is too high when you're like, well, I'm going to help the neighbor and help here and help this. Meanwhile, your family is just a mess, falling apart, and there's emotional trauma and mental trauma and maybe physical poor health and all kinds of relationship strain and drama and all this stuff's going on. All the while, we're like, well, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do this. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Nope. The rule here is, and this has been for us, like the rule is family's priority, health is priority, spirituality is priority. Like those things are the most important. So they get the most attention and other things get a no.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that some people are like, well, no, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. You know, we got to be doing this and this. I'm like, well, let's measure up our results, because your decisions and your thinking and your systems have led you to your current results. And if they're not dialed in, then you got to reevaluate. And so like, well, we can start questioning the methods when the results are nailed. And so I think that's totally important. Like start eliminating things, anything that can go should go, until you're just so dialed in, your systems are so nailed that then you're like, hey, I've actually have extra bandwidth this month to start reaching out and helping others, because everything is so dialed in and working so well in my immediate circle.
And I mean, like maybe to be even a little more specific, because we've seen this with several of your coaching clients, that people will say yes to work things and church things and service opportunities and neighborhood things, all in the effort of trying to be good people, I mean, it's from the goodness of their heart. It really is. We're not questioning that. But the problem is they do that, and then they're coming to you like, why is my marriage falling apart? Why won't my kids listen to me or respect me? We're like, it's because you're putting that energy and attention outward instead of focusing it at home. And that's one thing that we've been really strong about, is saying no to all of that stuff so we can focus in on what's most important to us. And in some ways, you know, people could say that that's selfish, but I think that that's the right kind of selfishness, because as a result, we have rock solid marriage and we have rock solid family relationships. So that's what I want. It's worth it to me to say no to the rest of the stuff, even if I'm appeared from some people from the outside, like, oh, you're kind of selfish. You just, you know, focus at home. Yeah, I do.
Because home is priority and we're going to nail this, right? We are going to nail this. And then because it's so dialed in, now with our children, we're taking on more and more opportunities to make a difference. My son Parker and I just got involved in something that's off the charts.
You've been dreaming about something like this for like as long as I can remember.
I remember sitting in Costa Rica with our friends in 2008 talking about this very thing that now we have the bandwidth and the capabilities and the skills and the resources to participate in. And it's big international, like humanitarian rescue stuff. Awesome. Disaster relief, like all the coolest stuff, right, that I could dream of. And now I get to do it with my son. And I was with my other son this morning. He wants to join next year, right? And I'm sure my daughters will want it when they're ready. Like this is it, because we have prepared, we've built the base. But man, people reach out to me all the time, and either marriage or health or family, children are literally on the edge of disaster. Tragically, I often get calls and messages about kids that are even suicidal. They're threatening or attempting suicide. And we start looking in the systems and realize the parents are saying yes to all of these outside things that aren't bad things, but they're good things. They're good things, but they're to the total neglect of children that are in major crisis and need more attention. And the parents are like, yeah, but I have to keep saying yes to this obligation. Like, no, you don't. So wholeheartedly agree. Elimination and support systems, like you just cut off the crap. Start getting real serious about it and start cutting things out to get diving in.
Yeah, so which one? Because I was going to talk about this for a second.
What? Go for it.
Okay. So the next question is, so what system do you start with? Which we kind of just talked about.
I want to go. No, I want to go there more.
Okay, great. knowing that while you focus on creating and implementing that system, everything else will slip for a while. Where would you recommend starting? Okay, so first of all, before we dive into that a little, I want to set up this framework. Because while it is true that setting up simple systems, implementing systems can take a chunk of energy, focus, attention, time, ultimately, you want to be able to create systems that are sustainable. I kind of said that already. Meaning that one system shouldn't take huge amounts of time at the neglect of the other systems. Now, if you're in a crisis, that's going to be expected, that there's going to be some fixing time that requires more,
but not all.
But not all, thank you. Not all of your time, energy, attention, and focus. And ultimately, it needs to be sustainable. And I would even say that while you're implementing a new system, that still needs to be sustainable. Because I know I had those days where I would think, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. And I would stay up till 3 a.m. working on it every night for a month, right?
Oh,
and then I would be absolutely drained, exhausted, and I would crash. Okay. So while you're doing the implementation of a system, it can take more time, energy, attention, and focus, but it still needs to be sustainable. You can't burn yourself out and use yourself up because that doesn't work long term. Now you could do that one night a week. It's okay to push like that, but if you're doing that every single night, you're only ruining yourself, really. And if you ruin yourself, you can't do the rest of it. So that's the framework I want to have here.
I think we need to make a t-shirt that says, don't self-ruin yourself.
Nice. So essentially, though, the framework is it has to be done in a way. I guess I just love the word sustainable because I want to keep using that word. Sustainable. It has to be sustainable. And I'm speaking from experience because I've worn myself out. You have to do it so that you can keep doing it, right? Do it in a way so you can keep doing it. And what that means for me is I stop. I have a stopping point. I say, okay, it's enough. I'm done. And I walk away and I do something else. Even though there's more that could be done with that thing, because there will always be more that could be done with that thing. Say you're working on a business or something, and you've got to do it because you need the money. Work, but you have to also stop working at some point, and I'm talking about daily, so that you can sustain the working long term. It's like a race, right? Or a marathon, or an adventure race, or a triathlon. You have to recover in order to keep pushing forward. So that's a part of the just the framework I want to have here.
So can I want to chime in. So the question is, like, where do I start? If I have all these things I need to work on, where do I start?
Yeah, so
I do have a very,
sorry, I'm just emphasizing again. We're putting these frameworks in place before deciding where to start. It's kind of what we're doing here.
Cool.
Eliminating support system, although that can also come as part of the where to start thing, but also that it needs to be sustainable. If when you look at everything, you decide this needs more focus, that still has to be done in a sustainable way or it won't last. And everything else will totally crash. And I want to add this because it's important. While you're putting your focus on whatever system it is you decide that we're going to talk about, you still have to be in maintenance mode for the rest of them.
Yeah.
That can be bare maintenance, right? So I have a bare maintenance mode for the homeschooling or for the finances or for the meals and the housework. There's always the bare maintenance mode that's going on. It's not a good idea. I wouldn't say I've never done it, but when I've done it, it's not a good idea to just neglect everything else for the sake of doing this one thing. And that's kind of also ties in exactly with what I was talking about making it sustainable. It's also sustainable when you maintain all these other things so they don't totally crash and burn. So this goes into focus mode, but everything else has to stay in maintenance mode, which means you can take a break from doing this because you can't just do it 24 hours a day, and you go load the dishwasher or clean up the kitchen or spend some time with your kids. You have to keep the other things maintained with the basics. Okay, that was my interlude.
Right. And in that, so I've got two different answers. And maybe it's the same coin. So just opposite sides. We look at all these important areas of your life and you say, where do I start? And on one side of the coin, I say, start with everything. And you just address a little bit of it. Just a little, you just take bits and pieces of it. You're hitting the little things because you don't want to neglect any important part. And it is possible to make progress every week. So what are we? We're Wednesday. By Saturday, you could go through and you could have made progress on all the important areas.
Like a 1% improvement.
Yeah. You can go on a really special date with your spouse this weekend. You could spend some quality time just talking with each of your kids in the next few days. You could totally clean out a closet or a room that's been problematic. You could take a huge load to a donation center and just declutter. You could go over your budget or your finances.
I'm feeling these are more like 5 or 10% things you're talking about.
I am.
I said 1%.
I know, but I'm gonna, like, when things are getting in crisis mode, you have to get responsive. And so this is the one side of it. I'm going to kind of give the fire hose side of it, which is usually my side of it. Right? This is how I like to approach things. But I'm going to go all in and I'm going to address these things because I'm not going to let them stop me anymore. And I'm not going to let them disturb my peace and my happiness and my pursuits and my progress. And so if I'm sitting there looking at a bunch of obstacles, you better believe I'm getting out my jackhammer and I'm just going to start wrecking obstacles. I'm not just going to be like, oh, it's too big. There's too many problems. I'm going to go into like that mode. What's that mode? For me, it's like a fight mode, right? Or solution mode, or I'm going to get things done mode. And I'm dead serious. Like, you can take the next 5 days and man, I feel this so powerfully. You can do it. Just most people don't. In the next 5 days, you could totally transform parts of your life or your home or your existence or your environment that have been just annoying you. Whether it's your yard or your garage or your bedroom or your closet or your marriage or your kids or your cars, whatever, like, pick your thing. And if you want to, you can private message here in the chat, tell me your thing, and we'll give you specific strategies. But it's my commitment to freedom and control. Like, I'm going to direct my life. And if all this crap's happening, I'm going all stops. Like, we are fixing this crap. I am not going to just sit here and tolerate it, because in life, you get what you tolerate. So if you've been tolerating clutter, it is time to get rid of a ton of crap. And if that means you spend a couple hours tonight taking pictures and posting it on Facebook Marketplace to sell them, great. If it means, hey, there's a bunch of stuff for free, come get it, and you put it all on the front porch, great. If it means you load it all up in your car and take it to a donation center tonight, great. Like, you'll feel so much better because you'll take one room and just clear it out. And like, now it can't get cluttered because there's not enough stuff to clutter it. That's a good thing sometimes.
That's my favorite.
Right?
Not
It's
having enough
awesome.
stuff to clutter
Like,
around.
just get rid of all the crap you think you need. It's usually like some emotional attachment to it, and you're trying to hold on to your stuff, and getting rid of it actually is freeing mentally and emotionally as well. Like, whatever the thing is, address it head on. Stop like scooting around it and like, it's like this thorn. You're like, oh, don't touch that thing. And it's like screwed around, and you just leave it there, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're like, it's such a problem. Man, if it's a threat, kill it, destroy it, get rid of it, like go all in and solve it. So
Can I add to this?
Yes, please.
Sorry. I just want to add to this because yes, this is a total legit strategy that we have done. And so when you're like, well, where do I start? All these things need attention. Well, one strategy is identify the next action step for each one of those things. And we're saying action step because it's something you could actually do. Like here, you hear these examples all the time. One of them was this woman wanted to clean her house. And they're like, okay, how do we start? Well, I need to move this bookcase into the other room. Okay. So what's stopping you from doing that? And she's like, well, I need to measure it to make sure it's going to fit. Okay. What's stopping you from doing that? Well, I can't find my tape measure. So she'd been waiting for like months to organize because the next step was to move the bookcase, but she couldn't move the bookcase until she measured it and she couldn't find a tape measure. And so her progress was being held back by not having a tape measure. And a lot of times we don't think through that and realize, oh, the next step for me to organize my house is to get a tape measure. And so you have to go through this process of like, okay, what's the next step to make an improvement in this thing? What's the next step in my homeschooling? What's the next step in my finances? And you have to work backwards until you think of the very next thing. And the reality is it's often not a big thing. It really isn't. Very, very often the next thing is just a small step. And that's how life works, step by step by step. It's like, okay, the very next step is this. And they're usually small enough that you can do multiple of those steps in one day for each area of your life. So really, when it comes down to it, it is that simple of a process. Like, okay, what's the next step in these 5 areas of life that I can take action on? And it might be making a phone call or ordering something from Amazon or, just simply moving something. What's the next step? And then what's the next step after that I can do the next day? And what's the next step after that I can do the next day? And then step by step by step, you're actually making progress in multiple things in your life.
Yep. And I think one thing that gives us an advantage in this is once we identify those steps, we take massive action. Both of us do. We kind of do it differently, but we take massive action. And if you were able to just watch us on a random day when we're like, hey, there's an obstacle, we're going to address it, you'd be like, whoa, like just let them go. And you just take massive action and lean into it until the problem is taken care of. Go ahead.
I was just saying, Laura says, I'm reading that book, Getting Things Done. Yes. And that's where I got that idea from, because I read that book years ago and I literally went through that process. In that book, he says, go through every single thing in your life. He meant like literally every single thing, touching every single thing in your house and every piece of paper and every email and every file you have and everything. And I did that once and it was a very liberating process and challenging, but it helped me to feel like I had this sense of manageable control over the things in my life and helped me be able to move forward and finish things and get things done. And like, I'm great at clearing runways. Like I can clear a runway.
Watch out, people. So the other side of the coin, if I were to pick one specific thing, I would say health. Make sure you're taking care of you and your health and your self-care. Now, the really good news with that is it doesn't take a lot of time. In fact, it often takes less time. But we think, I don't have time to be healthy. Oh, yes, you do. And because it doesn't take a lot of time, and it actually gives you more energy and clarity, so you're more effective. And they did a lot of research and they found that they went out into this huge group of people and they had them work on tasks. They didn't tell them what they were measuring. It's like, you work on this. They took a group, like this group works on this group works on this group works on this group works on this. They wanted to see which task had a positive effect on all the other areas of life, but they didn't tell any of the participants that. They didn't know that. They thought they were being measured in that specific thing. They weren't. The researchers were watching the other aspects of their life and seeing which of those things had the greatest positive difference in all of the other things. And you know what it was? It was health and fitness. The group that just focused on exercising and eating healthy, they had positive results in every other area of their life. It just, the spillover effect from that was massive. And they're like, man, that's the thing. Of all the things, good things that we asked them to do, the one that had a positive effect on all of the others was health and fitness. So you can eat better and eat less. It takes less time to eat less, you guys. That's awesome. Hey, I got more time now. It's a great time management skill. Eat less. And you want to exercise. You want to move your body vigorously. Well, guess what? Vigor doesn't take a lot of time. There's a free app called the 7-Minute Workout. And if you do that 7-minute workout vigorously, you're going to move your body, your heart rate up, and your breathing rate up. It's fantastic. And if you can do 7 twice or 3 times, you get 21 minutes of a high intensity interval training. What? That's incredible, right? And I'll tell my coaching clients, I'm like, look, if you can't go run a 5K, at least put in 5 minutes of burpees. Do burpees for 5 minutes. See if you can do it. I challenge you. Try it, right? You can do things like that and just start getting healthy and energized, and that carries over, and it doesn't take much time. So,
right. Well, and I love what you're saying too, because you're right. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can start by working out for 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and everyone has that much time, but doing that is going to spill over. And the irony is, if you thought, oh, I've got to focus on my health, I'm going to work out for 12 hours today, like that would just be counterproductive. It wouldn't work. And I think it's also true. It's a principle that applies in other things too, because we think, oh, I got to get my finances in order. I'm going to work on them for 12 hours today. And the reality is that just won't work. You need to focus on making it a habit that you do consistently. You need to consistently work out for starting with 5 minutes a day.
Yep.
And eating well at each meal that you eat at, and focusing on your finances for 5 minutes a day, right? You're starting with these small things that you can do day by day by day that are sustainable, which then creates sustainable systems.
So we're asking about the app, right? Because there's a lot of 7-minute apps. The best one I found is called eWomen's Workout, and it has a whole bunch of them. There's 7 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, has beginner, advanced, intermediate. And so it's just a simple app that tells you, so you don't have to get up and be like, what exercise should I do? Open your app, hit play, and just do the exercises. And if you want to start stacking, listen to a really great audiobook that addresses your mind, or a spiritual text. So you're getting in your spiritual, mental stuff while you're doing your physical exercise, right? It's fantastic. You start stacking. If I'm trying to think through some scenarios here so I can give you some real specifics of how I would take massive action. Let's say my house was getting cluttered. The garage or the yard or a couple of rooms are cluttered. I haven't been working out. I haven't been listening to any books. And
the homeschool's falling apart.
I'm starting to feel frustrated. All these things are happening. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw on a great audiobook. I'm going to mentally move so fast that I get a workout, like a legit workout. I will be dripping sweat. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the house. I'm going to get rid of everything. I'm going to processing, clearing clutter, taking a trip out, and I'm going to do an air squat. Everything instead of bending over and pick up, I'm going to air squat every time I pick something up. And I'm going to clean a room and I'm cleared out. And if you go in there and you're like, I hate this stupid old mirror, this dumb piece of decoration we've had forever. Or I'm going to go in my closet and be like, I haven't worn 15 of these things in the last year. They're all gone. And I'm going to sprint to the car and I'm going to sprint back. Like, this is me taking massive action. So I have a great audiobook on. I'm running, I'm cleaning, I'm decluttering. I'm going to transform my house and get things done. So I get a tangible result.
Yeah.
No joke, man. If I came down to your house today, and we're really close to you, so don't tempt me. If I came down to your house today, by the end of the evening, your house would look completely different. It would be a new environment. Because when I get serious about something, like there's no messing around. Like if it needs a transformation, do it. Stop talking about it. Stop thinking about it. Create a transformation. Wow.
Okay, we have another thing I want to address, but along this line, I want to mention another approach I take, because I'll reach these points where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I don't have a handle on things. What do I do? Where do I start? And I really just start with wherever I am. So I'll get up in the morning, and depending on what's going on, if my kids are there or they're not there, say they're not there, I'll be like, okay, how do I want to start my mornings? Maybe, because I'll do this on occasion of kind of just rethinking everything. I wake up, how do I want to start my mornings? What do I want to do? And so I spend that time where, usually it's morning routine I'm doing. I spend that time now thinking about and strategizing what I actually want to do. How do I want to start my day? Do I want to be moving my body? Do I want to be meditating? Do I want to be reading from something? And I will make a plan during that time. So instead of saying, oh, I want to do these things, but I'm feeling like everything's out of control, I'll refocus and say, okay, actually, I want to do these things. So how can I set up a system that will make sure I can do these things when I wake up? And so I'll create and organize that system. Then I go to the next thing. Now my kids are up and they're hungry, and maybe all I have is cereal. Okay, that's fine. I give them the cereal, and then I spend that time thinking about what I would want to be eating instead. And how can I make a system for ordering groceries that get delivered? So I don't even have to go to the store to be tempted by the cereal. I just get my groceries delivered to me. That's my new system. So it's not like I feel like I have to do it right then, but I'll spend that time thinking about the improvement I'm going to make and making a plan or a strategy for making that change. Then I go to the home. Now it's time for school. Oh my gosh, we don't even know what to work on. Whatever. Okay, the kids are just going to play, and I'm going to spend this time strategizing what are we going to focus on, and what curriculum are we going to use, and what do they need to be working on? I'm going to use this time to create that new system. And so I'll often do this when I'm in this, space of feeling overwhelmed and things need to be rehauled. I'll use the time that we would spend doing that thing actually creating the plan. So sometimes my homeschool days, especially for me at the beginning of a year or the end of a year, are spent strategizing what to do about the homeschooling, or strategizing what to do about the business, or strategizing what to do about the finances when I come to that time during the day, if that makes sense.
Isn't that amazing? Like in 1 or 2 play days where you strategically like, hey kids, it's a free day, just go play. And you don't just sit around like, oh, what should I do? Oh, okay, I don't know. Like they go play and you recreate a whole new system for the next several months. Boom, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not lost weeks where you're trying to drag it out and limping along and it's totally ineffective. You let them have a free day. And while they're having a free day, you're getting crystal clear about what needs to happen and finding resources and implementing those things. So when they come back, say, hey, guys, starting on Monday, we have a new system strategy here. This is how we're going to roll this out and do this. It's amazing. It doesn't have to take a ton of time. But it just has to be deliberate and take a few days and moments of massive action. Now, we got another question that is about spouses. Like, what happens if your spouse is not on board? And particularly, it's about husbands. Husbands will lean into work big time. So as a man and a husband, I want to share kind of a man's perspective. We feel, and I think, well, it's at least evolutionary development, if not also divine. We feel a very intense drive to provide. And in our effort to take that seriously and to fill that role, we can go all in and we can get this one-track mind and we become so intense about it. And what's interesting is all the while we're telling ourselves, like, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for man because I don't want to be a failure as a provider, and go, go, go. And it can start to neglect family. and marriage and parenting, those other things, just because I'm so dead set on not failing as a provider. What's interesting, I get to work with men every day, literally. And I see a lot of this. And sometimes the man I'm working with, his dad totally failed to provide. And so he has that driver, like, I'm not going to be like that. What? He goes. Sometimes his dad was a great provider and he's got a model, or maybe his dad went too far. And so this guy's like, I'm not going to be like that, and pulls back too much. Or there's all kinds of meaning and distraction there. And we can get caught up in these business goals and get so distracted by the next level of success or the next $1 million or whatever it is. And so as men, we get really caught into that. And so it can feel like, your husband isn't participating as much. And so.
And the family gets leftovers and their health is neglected. And of course, you and the kids miss him being there. And all the while, he's just trying to
succeed in that role. And maybe there's more to it. Again, this is a really complex question and scenario where, like, when he is home, how does he feel? Does he feel needed? Does he feel wanted? Does he feel like just Mr. Do It? Like he comes home and all it is just a to-do list. And again, this is for all of us just thinking through our relationships. And I think there's all the time too. How do I make Rachel feel? Am I constantly making demands on her? Am I adding to her stress? Am I behaving like a child so she feels like she has one more kid to take care of? Am I trying to lighten that load? Am I dating her, courting her, chasing her, making her feel loved and admired and wanted, right? So you're going through all these things, but you have to be careful. Like a lot of husbands, they just feel like they're just Mr. Fix-It. They come home and they're like, they get criticized and men are sensitive to criticism from their wives, by the way. We're kind of babies about that. But because we give a lot of weight to what our woman says.
Well, right. And so sometimes men can feel more validated, more important, more significant, more in control at work.
And more successful. Like I'm crushing it at work and everyone likes me and they want advice from me and I'm killing it. I come home like, geez, right. I don't get any respect around here. I'm not getting any results around here. They just want me to take care of things, or they just treat me like an ATM.
Or they just complain or nag. I know that we've seen this in some extended family members that he doesn't want to be at home because it's constant complaining, even complaining about him being gone so much, instead of when he's actually there saying, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Let's make the most of this time. Let's enjoy it. Let's have a good time together.
So when he walks through the door, she's like, gosh, about time you get home. Where you been? And he's like, wow, why did I come home?
And right? So in some ways, like, again, there's so many levels to this. There's so much complexity. You have to start, though, with trying, and this is where we always start with everything, is analyzing. We're really good at analyzing, right? And it's easier to analyze when we are in person and we can observe what's happening. Then we are great at making analysis. But you have to do this and analyze it. You have to look at it and say, okay, why does he want to be at work more than he wants to be at home? How might I be contributing to him wanting to be at work?
Ooh, can I give a specific? If Rachel says anything about finances, that she's worried or stressed about finances, like, oh, we don't have enough, like anything, and she might just be expressing stress and worry, that immediately puts me into, oh man, I have to go. And if a lot of our interaction and discussion is stress and worry about money, then that all men just take that on. And I will take that whole burden. And this happened with a guy Larry Miller, he wrote a book called Driven. And early on in his marriage, they didn't have enough food or money for their new baby. And he's like, that's it. And he worked 90 hours the next week. And then he worked 90 hours every week for the rest of his life. And he ended up on an early deathbed because he neglected his health. His family was a mess. Some of his kids wouldn't even come to see him while he was dying because he neglected his family. And then he said, I neglected my relationship with God and I'm about to go meet him early and I'm not ready. But he went so hardcore into earning money. His life will never happen again. There will never be another week of our lives when we don't have enough money. And he took it and he went too far. And yeah, he made tens of millions of dollars and super successful in business. But at what cost? Right? And so, but that's just the illustration of the man mindset. And we have to be careful about those relationships and how, like Rachel was saying, how we might be inadvertently contributing to that, or just at least not supporting. And again, look at the systems. How are the systems set up? I had one client, the wife just spend like crazy. So the husband's only option was to just keep working like a madman. And so then their marriage is falling apart, kids are falling apart, health's getting neglected. And it was all happening because she just would spend like wild, way beyond any kind of budget. And so he had no other option but just to literally exchanging his life for money. Right? Wow, it's a tough situation.
It is really tough. And again, I don't know that that's a specific answer because it's difficult to give a specific answer. Well, back to the idea that everything is complex. There's not one answer. There's not one reason why the husband is working alone. There's likely multiple reasons. And so it's kind of like you're peeling this onion, taking off all the layers, trying to get to the core, but all of the layers are contributing as well. And so it starts by paying attention. You have to pay close attention to what's actually happening.
And ask if you can.
Asking.
Just ask.
Even if they turn into uncomfortable conversations, but sometimes we have to have those uncomfortable conversations.
And then the other thing is just look at, and do this with all of your relationship with your kids, your spouse, everything. Say, how can I make it? And I do this myself. Like, how can I make it better for Rachel to be my wife and to be the mother of our children? What can I do? Right? And I know she's asking that herself about me too. Like, how can I make it better for me to be a husband and a father? And how we go through the kids. How can we make it better for them to be at their age in our family at this time?
Well, and along this line, I think this actually fits perfectly because one of the concerns is husband's gone, we miss him, and I'm running the house by myself. In that case, if that was me, do you know what? I'm going to do a damn good job at running the house. Like, I'm going to rock running the house so that he's going to be like, wow, oh my gosh, you are rocking this. Because what happens when your spouse admires and respects you, it changes the dynamic. And they're more open to listening to you. They're more open to hearing your concerns because they don't feel that you're an additional burden. They feel that you're an asset. So very often the way to solve a problem is to increasing your capacity and capability to do the job you have really, really well, if that makes sense.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree, 100%. The one little thing there that I've seen multiple times,
yes,
especially with, I see this very often with doctors and dentists who had to go to medical school and they were gone so much at medical school or dental school or residency or whatever, like really advanced education, they had to step away, or military, they had to go away. Well, the wife was left with no other option but to take control of everything. So then she runs everything and he comes home and begins to feel useless.
Right.
Like, I'm not needed.
Yeah. So
and men need to feel needed.
Yeah. So you need to do it. But if he wants to help, if he offers help, you still have to make him feel that he's needed.
Yep.
If he comes home and is like, oh, what can I do? Because very often what happens is he comes, what can I do? Nothing. I've got it.
Don't do that.
He doesn't want that. Oh, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, you can do this and this and this. I would really appreciate your help with these things.
Or I'm glad you're here. Let's go.
I'm glad you're here.
Make love. Let's go on a date. Let's just go. I took care of this. Hang out. Or yeah, when you get to it, when you're ready, that would be cool if you could reach out for me. I tried, but I couldn't get it. But like, work on the relationship.
Right.
Work on all of that.
So you need to rock it. You need to be good at it, but not with a I don't need you since you're never around anyways attitude. Just like, okay, you're working. I would love to have you here. I want to have you here. I need you, but I'm going to do my job really well. And that's going to create this sense of respect. You're going to respect me. And I know that's true about you. You respect me because I do my job well.
Yep.
Vice versa, right? We have a mutual respect for each other because we're each fulfilling our roles the best we can. And so then we're open to each other's feedback, requests, desires, needs, because we're able to say, hey, I'm not being a burden on you. I'm contributing here, but I feel I need this from you. If that makes sense.
Love it. And if it happens to be a health concern anywhere in the family, like, because this comes up a lot actually with a lot of people I get to work with, where one or both of the spouses are unhealthy or just lack energy and vitality, or the kids do. Either way, like, your priority, your number one priority, and I say this priority never goes away, is make sure your health and the health in your family is just top notch. Like, make that an absolute priority. And again, we already talked about this. It doesn't take a ton of time. Make it a priority so that everybody can get into a place of energy and vitality and just feeling good, because the worst way to do life is just feeling empty and drained and blah. And again, that's a whole new framework. And maybe we can do a whole session on healthy energy, because we often think, well, I just feel like a drag. I'm just dragging. I'm just tired. And I just always feel like I have crappy health. And it's very often the food you're consuming, or the lack of exercise, or self-care. There's a lot to it that you can do to just ramp up energy levels and vitality and good health. So that becomes a priority.
That being said, that's difficult when it's your spouse who's the one that doesn't want to be healthy. And, we have some firsthand experience with this with family members, that there's a family member that just is unhealthy and they just don't want to improve their health. Now, unfortunately, I think that's directly connected with the lack of meaning they have in their life. And so they literally would rather just die sooner than get healthy. So if that's the case, if you have a spouse who's neglecting their health in a serious way, there's something deeper there. There's some sort of perhaps meaninglessness that they're experiencing in their life, that they just don't see a need to take care of their health. And so, I don't know. I mean, the way we do things around here is we don't let that kind of stuff go. We will push and push and push until we get to the core and we're like, that's it right there. Why do you feel like that? You're not taking care of your health because of this. Why? And then
what are we
we'll
gonna do
spend hours discussing something to get to a resolution. Now, we've gotten good at this because we practice a lot. And we're able to identify things quickly. We understand psychology and all of this. So we're good at it, but we don't let it get away.
And the hard rule is we don't tolerate this stuff. So I guess that's a big takeaway for today. Just kind of go through your systems, go upstream and just say, what am I tolerating? Where have I allowed a low standard to sneak in here? What's going on? And pick the area of your life that maybe is a pain point or an obstacle and say, what have I been tolerating here? And then massive action on that thing and do it in the next 5 days.
Well, right. So, I mean, we are even to the point where we don't tolerate that kind of stuff. We have the type of relationship where if you weren't taking care of your health and vice versa, we don't tolerate that. Yep. We're like, you're not doing that. Why? And you'll say, don't you want to live a long life with me? So in some ways.
And she might be like, no, you're not very pleasant to be around. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe my unpleasantness
is leading to her unhealthiness.
The subconscious unhealthiness.
Yeah. And
I'm
so
like, well, okay, I'm going to be really pleasant And then we're going to talk about what we're going to do at our grandchildren's weddings. And she's going to be like, oh, I'm going to get healthy because I want to be there to swing dance at our grandchildren's weddings.
That's right. So I guess what I'm saying in a way is that you have to be able to push enough. You don't want to be pushy,
right,
but you do need to find a way to push out of love to get to the core of the issues that you're facing, because otherwise you won't find a resolution. There will not be a resolution. You can't fix these problems until you get to the heart of them and actually have a change of heart. That's you and your spouse in order to make real change. So that's the answer.
Huge. Okay, good stuff. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching this recording. Thanks for being great people. Thanks for being a part of our community. Thanks for caring about yourself and your family and your kids and your life. I mean, we're always giving you the fire hose version every time we jump on here. But you guys, it's worth every effort. Genuinely, sincerely, it's worth every effort.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to this place where your kids are just rocking it, and they're not fighting, and they're not making poor choices, and you're just madly in love with your spouse, and you together, you're chasing beautiful dreams, even working hard together through the challenging times. It's so rewarding. It's so beautiful. So it's worth every effort. So, like, see what you've been tolerating and what you've been accepting, and make a resolution, make a commitment. Say, I don't tolerate that anymore. Look at the systems, pick one of them or a couple of them you can start working on this week in the next 5 days.
Actions, the very
take
next actions.
Take the next action, and then take massive action. If you have a serious obstacle in your way, get out the proverbial jackhammer today and start crushing that thing in your life in the next few days, and just watch how everything in your life starts to feel differently and respond differently, how you get more momentum because you're just stop messing around and tolerating that crap. Just start clearing things out and make room and momentum in your life. Love you guys. Have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. Reach upward.